What is up? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Friday. FIF is an episode where we talk about certain topics that actually keep us down. And the reason why I want to bring up these sessions is because oftentimes you can get caught up with random ass glitches that happen throughout. There you go. Technical difficulties, I apologize. But anyway, not to interrupt the live stream. FIF Friday is our episodes where we focus on certain topics that we can all relate to. Again, regardless of whatever your background is, regardless of where you come from, whether you come from money or you don't come from money, or you grew up in a certain part of town that's affluent, or you grew up in a certain part of town that's non-affluent. I think that these topics are going to test us at some point in time, and FIF is brought to you so you can understand that no matter who you are, where you're from, we all encounter it. And so my goal and my hope is to cover some of these topics and give you different strategies to overcome these particular challenges, because I am absolutely certain that you're going to face these particular challenges. I promise. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about the law of average. We're basically going to talk about average and how average, it will always be around, right? Like I am a firm believer that in anything that we do, we have examples all around us. And typically those examples are how in bare bones, it's examples of how not to do it and examples of how to do it. And so I want you to understand that your surroundings, I did a post and I said that, on Instagram, that your environment is very important. Your mindset is determined by your environment. And I got a couple comments that, that was almost aggressive, saying, it doesn't matter about your environment. Your mindset is set the way that, from the situation that you come from. So if you come from poverty, your mindset is set up that way. If you come from wealth, your mindset is set up that way. And to some degree, I agree with that statement. However, I believe that no matter where we come from, we can set our mindset on a path of, or at least in the direction in which we want to go. Now, where average plays into this is that this law of average is very much like the law of gravity, right? So whatever goes up comes down. Just like the law of average, if you consider averages that you hear on a daily basis, like, your batting average or average turn time or average close ratio, because us in sales, we are kind of ruled by these metrics and these KPIs, right? And we're always being told that life and results typically are a numbers game. And where results come into play as far as the law of average is that we will go into it believing that out of every 10 pitches, you only close one deal. And then we look at that and say, okay, well, that's the average. So the average close ratio within these leads is 1 out of 10. And sometimes we allow that to determine our perception on that particular lead. Now, I'm just giving you an example of a lead, but you can apply this to anything in life. You can apply this to, moving to a specific zip code, or getting with that chick, or getting with that dude, however you swing, right? Like wherever direction you're going, wherever momentum you're giving, just like the law of gravity, law of average has this reaction to every action, right? And so again, when you think about averages, the average person, the average result does not necessarily apply to you. However, we are wired to kind of accept that. And I want you to think about like the people who support you, your core, your team. It could be your parents, it could be your guardians, it could be your best friends, it could be your spouse, the people who are in your inner circle. You see, what I realize is that average is accepted by these people. And I'm not saying that anything's wrong with that. They love you and they support you, and that we should be very fortunate to have people like that within our environment, right? Because again, environment is going to dictate your mindset and the strength of your ambition and your will. And so if we consider that all these people who we care about and who love us and support us are okay with average, we become okay with average, right? There's this one saying that you are the average of the 5 people you are most closest to. And so if that is true and we just look at that and we accept it, then what's not to say that we'll look at anything and accept the average? Because I believe that average is our way to kind of justify why we are not rising above, or why we can't make it to a specific level or a height in which we see others make. because we might accept that, oh, well, I don't have a degree, or I don't come from that lifestyle, or I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, or right. It's the perception, and usually it's ingrained with us because of our environment. And so that's why I tell you the environment is really going to determine whether or not you're average or not. Because if your core, if your circle of friends or your circle of loved ones, the people that you desire, you trust most, you care for most, are telling you things like, hey, at least you tried, or hey, it's okay, or hey, maybe it just wasn't meant to be. That's the law of average. And so average is almost, again, like a settlement and an excuse and a reason why you shouldn't try as hard, or why you can't make it that far. And because the core people around us support us and love us, they'll tell us things that try to make us feel better, right? So no wrong to them. And you might do it too. So if you have a friend or you got a family member that's really going through it, you might even tell them words that represent the law of average. Like, it's okay, you'll get it next time. It's okay, don't give up, right? Like, these are encouraging words, but at the same time, we need to realize that we are influencing, and we are also being influenced by the law of average. And so I want to share with you, where I came from and how I grew up. The average, I would say, maybe let's just use statistical numbers, right? Only about maybe 2 out of 10 individuals who come from that particular background, or who grew up within that city and that circle of influence, actually makes it out. So I know a lot of people who still never made it out. And I see them because they're either connected with them on social media or what have you. And I'm not saying anything bad about them, but it's always kind of baffled me. And I've always been kind of, infatuated with how certain people rise above, how certain people climb out. And I'm not saying anything to brag, because I'm not even done yet. I'm nowhere near being at the height of where I want to be. But I'm not going to accept the fact that the law of average should suggest that because I don't have a rich background, I don't come from a rich family, or I don't have a 6-year master's degree, right? I don't have a PhD. So I'm not letting that hinder my performance or my ambition, because I understand that it is a choice to break past average, just like it's a choice for you to break past average. So when you go into your job for the day, whatever it is you do, and you look at your process as kind of like a numbers game, right? And you're saying like, okay, well, all I got to do is talk to 10 to make 1. So let me go and start with number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And each and every single time you lose, you accept it because you believe that, oh, that's not the 1 out of 10. You see, average lets us kind of slide, right? It lets us be okay with settling for things that aren't necessarily what we exactly want. Why couldn't we think of a way to say, hey, fuck 1 out of 10. How can I get to 2 out of 10? And the only way to really get there is through repetition. But during the process of repetition, and as you're learning and mastering your craft and building your experience, you're going to be tempted by the law of average all the time. Because again, around you, you have people showing you examples of how to do it and how not to do it. You see, the easy example to follow is how not to do it. Because it doesn't mean that, if it's an example of how not to do it, they're just not producing. They could be very well, just average, mediocre producers, right? They're just doing just enough to hit quota, maybe just enough to get a tad bit above quota. But I'm talking about having the foresight and the mindset and the ambition to search for the people who are breaking past that, look straight to the top. And if you don't desire to be at the top because you're like, it's okay, money isn't everything. I agree with you, money isn't everything. But it's the mindset. How you do one thing is how you do everything. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter if how your views are about money. I believe money doesn't, buy happiness, but shit, having money don't hurt. Having that flexibility don't hurt, right? But if we become so kind of in this trance of average, we will accept, again, let me repeat, we will accept mediocrity because we think that, oh, well, it must be this average game. So I got to average 10K a month or 15K a month, and then I'm okay. What we need to look at is how do we push ourselves into that non-comfort zone? How do we challenge ourselves? How do we find adversity? Because if you're not challenging yourself and you're kind of just remaining stagnant and you're avoiding friction or you're avoiding resistance or you're avoiding pain, right? Like, and when I'm talking about pain, I'm not talking about like go cut yourself, boo boo. What I'm talking about pain is like when you go to the gym, right? Like you are putting yourself through pain because you want your body to become stronger. However, a lot of average people will go to the gym and quit after a couple days, or maybe quit after a month because they can't push past it. Or they don't see the results fast enough, and so they'll say, maybe it just wasn't for me. Working out isn't my thing. You see, the reason why people will accept average and accept mediocrity is because they are influenced to believe that it's okay, right? Look at baseball, bro. Like if you got a 300 batting average, like you're a multi-millionaire. You're considered greatness, right? And that, man, if you think about it, that means you missed 7 out of 10. So where I'm getting at is that if we can figure out how to be a little bit more efficient, that will help us break past average. But the only way that you can break past average is if you test your limitations and you push yourself farther than where you see the average is. And so if you go into an environment and everyone there is making on average of, let's say, 10 sales a month, and you're okay with that because you see that, hey, that's just the average number. So we believe there's this kind of like this ceiling. But little do we know that that ceiling is made of glass, and it is your choice to either stay within that, encumbered within that limit where everyone else is average, and you think that, okay, well, let me just go ahead and do average because, again, we're wired to accept average, as opposed to break past that glass ceiling, right? Why not test ourselves and test those around us and not conform to the norm, right? Not conform to mediocrity or being average. And oftentimes the reason why we will accept being average is because of that fear of failure. And that's where coming in and not being within your comfort zone. Do something that challenges you. Set goals that scare you. Like envision it and make it a reality, right? And so maybe you're not there. How do you test average? Maybe you're not there, right? So maybe you're not necessarily at the income level or the success level that you want to be. How I used to do this is that before I had the nice car, before I had the nice house, I would put myself in the environment of these nice cars and these nice houses. So I would be the weirdo going to like some open house in a nice area because I wanted to walk through that house as if I owned it. I wanted to go through it and pull up and envision like, hey, this is my crib. Sounds weird as fuck, right? But it does something because it kind of revives you and it makes you think that it's possible. And I still do it today. I'll tour $1 million homes, $2 million homes within this area and look at it and like, hey, this could be, you know what I mean? Like that could be me. And I want that. I want my family to experience that. Whereas average, and I'm not saying that average is wrong, but I'm saying average is a choice. Where the average is okay with the regular suburban home. Like I continuously want to push myself, and I hope that you have that same feeling. Do you continuously push yourself? Or are you settling when you're too young or too old even, right? Like, are you okay with just getting by? Are you okay with just being like everyone else? Or do you want to stand out and get what it is that you want? Again, it's a choice, but unfortunately our choices are actually influenced by average because they're influenced by our surroundings. And I'm not saying your family, your mom, your dad, or your brother or your sister are average people and that's bad. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that understand that you have a choice to be the average, or you can accelerate and blow past the average and get what it is you want. Reach the levels that you desire. And it is a choice because when I was growing up, man, I could have never envisioned that I would have the things that I have today. When I was looking for a job before I even got into being a mortgage loan officer, I would never have imagined that I would be making the type of income that I'm making now. I would never imagine that I would provide my children with the lifestyle that they have today. Get it? And when I look back into my past just to see how far I've come, I am reminded that it was a choice. It was a choice that I could have just stayed within that environment. I could simply grow up. You know, when I grew up, I moved around a lot, for those of you who already know, right? And there was a point in time where, you know, I would live in the ghetto and then I lived in the suburbs for a minute. And one thing that I was very good at, and I hope you're good at it too, if you're not, pick this habit up, is you want to study your surroundings, because the surroundings is very important. To me, your environment, your surroundings is very, very crucial to how you are growing as an individual. But I used to have to study my surroundings because, in the ghetto, like, you couldn't necessarily walk down certain streets. You couldn't look at people in a certain way. You couldn't, you know what I mean? Like, there's a reason why you get mad dog like when you're driving through the hood, right? Is because there's certain things that you need to adapt to, but it wasn't like that in the suburbs. But you know what I did notice, the primary difference besides in studying the environment, is that in the ghetto, people didn't do or act or live the same way as people within the suburbs. Even though the suburbs wasn't affluent, it wasn't like I was, living around people with mansions. That's the next level. Just like people within a affluent area where the average home price, let's say, is $2 million, they don't operate, act, or live the same exact way as people with, let's say, $1 million average home value, right? It's because these are just different pockets. These are different environments. But what I did realize, because I didn't ever get to that affluent area, not yet at least, is that when comparing the ghetto to the suburbs, or at least the mindset and the surroundings and the environment between the two, is that in the hood, people accepted average more often. So they were okay with kicking back in front of their house, drinking all day, not going to work, getting by on government support. Whereas the people within the suburbs, they acted and they operated differently. They were making moves. They had careers. They were living, right? And that's why their environment and their quality of lifestyle was different. But the only thing that really truly separates them too is choice. And so today, I want you to understand that being average is a choice. And if you choose to be average, there are a lot of things that you're leaving on the table. There are experiences that you will never really get to achieve. You might get highlights here and there. You might win here and there. And if you're in sales, this means that you have a good month, and then you just have a lot of bad months. And then you got one good month, and then you have a more bad months. And that's average. You see, to be above average, you need to learn consistency. And there's this saying that 10,000 hours before you become a master means you have to do something for at least 10,000 hours. And it will get easier. And that's how you break past average, is you continuously repeat the process. You continuously refine the systems. You continuously look at areas that you can improve, test yourself, and raise the average. So if your average, let's say, was 10% closing ratio, right? So out of every 10 deals you get, and you look at your KPIs, after every 10 leads you get, you only make one into a deal. So your average there in that example is 10%. You need to continuously go through that process until you raise it to 2. And so now you're at a 20% average, but continue, because you'll have a choice. You'll have a choice to say, hey, well, I guess I'm better than average at 2. But the elite, the future titans, the people who have the right ambition and the mindset and understand it's a choice, will then look for 3 en route to get to 4 or 5, because that blows past average. Does that make sense? So I hope you guys really enjoyed that. This FIF Friday, I really toned it down on the curse words, because FIF Friday isn't necessarily all about curse words. If anything, this is really to help you look at certain things and certain challenges that no one really talks about in your environment, and kind of put the spotlight on it, and realize that a lot of the topics that we cover on FIF really, at the end of the day, are excuses. And if we allow excuses to determine our success, if we allow excuses to determine our outcome, then I think that we are giving into average, because all the average people allow that. And just like the topic of average, don't let average be your excuse. So if you really like this FIF Friday, please make sure you light up that thumbs up button, comment your takeaway and what you learned inside this FIF session, and I will see you guys on the next one. Have a great weekend.